Chapter we're dealing with today is monopoly. Monopoly. It's on the other end of the competitive market spectrum from competition, which was the previous chapter, chapter 14. Okay, monopoly. While a competitive firm is a price taker, a monopoly firm by nature is a price maker. Now, a price maker, in the case of a monopoly, the monopoly has some control over the price. Not complete control. This isn't like a monopoly game where if you land on the square and somebody else owns it, you must pay that person rent. This is a situation where the the firm does have some control, but not complete control. You can dictate the price, but the consumer still has the option to buy or not to buy. Now, the monopolist could have monopoly control over an inelastic product, and so that is going to get closer to the monopoly game itself. Like, for example, if somebody had control over an AIDS vaccine, that would be a horse of a different color. And of course, that is what the monopolist would dearly love to have, and that is what the consumer would dearly like to not have happen. So monopoly puts the onus of control and power, if you will, from the consumer to the producer. Now, a firm is considered a monopoly if it is the sole seller of its product and its product does not have close substitutes. So the monopolist must be the only one, and it must sell something or provide something that there is not a close substitute for. So if I provide a brand of soap, Ivory soap for example, that's nice. I have a monopoly over that brand, but another company could have Irish Spring or Dove, which is a little different but still technically soap. Then that does not count as a monopoly. Now, as we'll find out in a later chapter, that will be monopolistic competition. Now, an example of monopoly that does fit those criteria is Hawaiian Electric. It's a utility company that provides electricity to at least the island of Oahu. And other states will have their own utility companies. Now, Hawaiian Electric can set rates or prices to its customers, and in doing so, it does not need to worry about competition. Alrighty, why monopolies arise? Monopolies arise because of barriers to entry. A barrier to entry is some way a means to keep out the competition. And a barrier to entry is consider it a moat around the castle of economic profits. And these are profits that are above the opportunity cost of the factors of production, including the entrepreneur. So the entrepreneur is making above normal profits, above what they ordinarily could use with their time. Oftentimes, wages, especially union wages, would be considered a monopoly wage, especially if the union is the sole bargaining agent for the group of workers, like the Hawaii Carpenters Union or the Screen Actors Guild, or in my case, UPA, University of Hawaii Professional Assembly. So workers can be monopolies as well. Now let's go on to the next slide and look at the sources of barriers to entry. Barriers to entry have 4 sources. Number 1, the monopoly can have ownership of a key resource. This tends to be rare. De Beers, the diamond company, is an example. This is a far more frequent example of something called network effects, especially with regard to all things technical, consumer electronics. This is the case of 2 competing technologies, and whichever one is the most popular becomes the standard, and that in effect becomes the monopoly. Lots of examples of this: Beta versus VHS in my day. Windows versus Macintosh now, Google versus Yahoo are examples of network effects. Now, it can be that one technology is superior and that technology wins, or it can be the case that one technology becomes the standard for all users and as a result becomes the monopoly. Now, another example, one that economists always rail about, is the role of the government in creating a monopoly. And the government can do this by the use of patents, which is the exclusive right to produce a product for 17 to 20 years. Copyright, the exclusive use of your work of intellectual property, whether it be writing a book, screenplay, other piece of written material, or government licensing for some profession, such as being a doctor, a teacher, a dentist, a licensed beautician. Now, the reason the government does this is in order to, in the case of a patent, give the incentive for people to produce something, to take the risk and not have somebody steal their idea. Same thing with copyright. In the case of government licensing, it's oftentimes to protect the public interest, safety concerns. You wouldn't want just anybody to be a doctor. Be that as it may, what these rights do is give one person or company monopoly power over somebody else, which they then use to make monopoly profits. Finally, number 4, the cost of production can make a single producer more efficient than a large number of producers. This is the case of a natural monopoly. Talk about this in the next slide. Hawaiian Electric is a really good example of this. So let's go on to the natural monopoly. And here we go. The economies of scale as a cause of monopoly. This is the case of a natural monopoly. There are large fixed costs that keep out competition so that one firm, as it produces more and more, as you can see here from the graph, it produces more and more. It travels down the average total cost curve, and it has a, let's get the arrow. Let's try the arrow this time. Oops, doesn't work with the arrow. Oops, let's go back. There we go. Let's do the pen. There we go. So we have a, oops, not a very straight line there, but we have a firm that is producing at this output as opposed to another firm that comes in that has to incur the higher fixed costs that produces at a lower output but a higher price. So one firm, one utility comes in there, can produce something at a lower price, and everybody else who comes in, because of the high fixed costs, it takes a lot of money to produce electricity, it takes a power plant to produce electricity, and so the first firm that comes in has an immediate advantage. Alrighty, so we'll talk about the pricing for a natural monopoly later on in the chapter, but let's now go to demand curves and the demand curve for a competitive firm and a monopoly firm. A competitive firm's demand curve is horizontal, indicating that's a price taker. It must accept the price that is in the firm. So whatever that price is right here, that is what the firm must accept. The monopoly case, the firm can, if it starts at a price here, the firm can lower the price, voila, and gain some more customers, but they have to lose some customers as well. So the monopolist demand curve is going to be downward sloping. Now, if the demand is more inelastic, that demand curve is going to be steeper, as you can see right there. If it's elastic, the demand curve is going to be horizontal in nature. I got to work on doing straight lines with this pointer. This is the first time I'm using a pointer, but it's good. It kind of I can add things to the slide without messing up the slide. Okay, let's talk a little bit about revenue. A monopolist revenue. Total revenue from monopoly, P times Q, or price times quantity. Average revenue, total revenue divided by quantity equals average revenue equals price. And marginal revenue, which I showed you a bit from the previous chapter, the change delta total revenue over delta quantity equals marginal revenue. Now, a monopoly's marginal revenue, as you can see here, is going to be, well, let's check it out in terms of the price. So here's the price for the firm, here's the marginal revenue. But look what happens as the price goes down. Marginal revenue is going to go down faster than the price. You can see here the price, you can see here the marginal revenue, price, marginal revenue. So what's going on? Why is the marginal revenue curve below the price or the demand curve? Next slide will explain this. The marginal revenue curve is always less than the price for a monopolist because the demand curve is downward sloping. And when a monopoly drops the price to sell one more unit, the revenue received from previously sold units also decreases. The key is that the monopolist must lose revenue to current customers to gain customers by dropping the price. So if I have, if I'm selling a good for, let's say, $5 and I have 10 units being purchased at $5, I want to drop the price to $4 to get a few more. I'm going to be losing the revenue from the current customers to gain some future customers. So there's going to be a loss and there's going to be a gain. The gain is going to be greater than the loss, but still there's going to be both a gain and a loss here. Now I'm sure Aplia is going to have an exercise on this so you can practice it. Now here, I'll just maybe I will draw it. Okay, so here is, what if, let's say the price was $9, you're selling 2 units, total revenue is going to be 18. Let's say I drop the price to 8. And now 8 times 3 is going to be 24. 18 minus, actually 24 minus 18 is going to be 6. So the marginal revenue is going to be 6. But that is going to be below 8. And the reason why is the monopolist has this total revenue for price of 9, but when they drop the price, they're going to lose this area right there because they have to drop the price to 8. So they're going to lose, let's see, 1 times 2. They're going to lose 3 units there, but they're going to gain this area right there. So they're going to gain, let's see, 1 times 8. So they're going to gain 8 and they're going to lose 3. So let's see, that's going to be 24. Wait. Okay, so 8. Oh, 8 times 2. Okay, I see. 8 times 2. So they're going to gain 8, lose 2. The ultimate gain is going to be marginal revenue is equal to 6. So 8 minus 2 is going to be 6. Now when we draw the margin revenue curve here, it's going to be $6 once you drop it to 3. And you can notice here the margin revenue curve is going to be in between 0.5, 1.5, 2.5. This is going to be 6, and it's going to be below the price because you're going to be gaining something and losing something at the same time. Okay, let's go. Oh yeah.